Now, ever since the debut of Snow White, it has been nothing more than a box office disaster, not just for the Walt Disney Company and Bob Iger as the CEO, but also for Rachel Zegler, and unfortunately for Gal Gadot, because she was dragged into this mess as well. And I do have to say that she really should have seen this coming. She should have really saw everything that was about to happen with this movie. Once she signed up with Disney, once she signed up with the Walt Disney Company, I should say, and everything related to Bob Iger's agenda, his overall ideology for many of these brands. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. So one thing about Snow White 25, as we know it, is that it is by far the worst iteration of Snow White. There is no doubt about this because of the storyline, because of the way it was created, the overall agenda. But let's be real, all agendas aside, putting the ideology over to the wayside, this is just a bad movie in isolation. The acting, the producing, the directing, the writing, the cinematography, everything about it across the board is just lackluster. It really sounds, or should I say feels like, even looks like a fever dream. That's how bad of a movie it really is. But going into all of this, one thing about Snow White in particular has a lot to do with Rachel Zegler's firing situation. We already talked about how she was let go from various projects by the Walt Disney Company, including doing voiceover work for Toy Story 5 as a character codenamed Spiral. She was also booted from the Pirates of the Caribbean remake, which I'm really starting to question whether or not that's even going to be made by the Walt Disney Company anymore, because we really haven't heard any updates about that, but we'll have to wait and see. But moving on forward, she's beginning to show a lot of bitterness, so to speak, after everything that has been happening with Snow White. Now, with the Walt Disney Company already dealing with endless backlash for their Snow White film, especially after the awful reviews came in from both critics that were once trusted by Disney and regular audiences that saw the film, one major development going on now involves more to do with the Rachel Zegler firing situation that took place in her recent behavior toward both Disney and toward the critics. Rachel Zegler recently delivered the following: I think when you are a woman in this industry, you tend to be in a far worse situation than a man, since we all know this industry is still heavily run by the male demographic, and sometimes you are not always going to be on the studio's good side when things don't go their way, when they hear loud, opinionated voices that spew lies and present false narratives to fit their politics. As an actress, it's important for me to understand human emotions, and what it means to study the emotions of anger, love, joy, and sadness. It's what makes actresses so talented. But what I don't tolerate are unhinged voices coming from one side of the country that criticize a character like Snow White that they don't even know about. It was Mark, Erin, and Greta's idea that I also shaked hands on, that we said to present a new iteration of Snow White by a lead that would actually come from a different ethnic background. It was truly the obvious way to expand the character's relatability. I think both people and studios can be very unfair when it comes to how they make decisions in this business, and I have experienced this myself, and I'm unwilling to go into specifics on that for a while. But but what I find to be completely offensive are those that don't respect what it takes to play Snow White. Imagine sitting in a dress for 16 to 18 hours a day. Just imagine that, and then one day you wake up and your character is finally playing on streaming. I just don't think actresses are paid correctly when they're making a film by getting their payout one time for a movie. Sometimes something needs to be done with streaming where the gains are fair from these studios in this business, and it's why acting is becoming harder and more difficult for the average woman to get involved in this very competitive business. So guys, before I move on, I think that what Rachel Zegler is alluding to there is that she's going back to when she was on strike. You guys may very well remember the actors' strike, when she said that she believes that she deserves to be paid every single time someone clicks on the movie Snow White on Disney Plus when it does arrive. And that's ludicrous. I mean, that is pure insanity. That's just how insufferable Rachel Zegler truly is. Whether she truly means that or not, whether she was trying to egg people on, who the heck knows at this point. But I have no doubt in my mind that she did mean that because, well, she really is just that insufferable, as you can see here. Now, again, Rachel Zegler going off about how she was in the costume for, 16 to 18 hours a day? Listen, this is just, standard business in the film industry. There's a lot of actors and actresses that go through that, especially for characters embedded in pop culture like Snow White. You're gonna expect to be in that for 14, 16, 18 hours a day. But what she doesn't really begin to realize is that this is a, one-time project, right? It's not like you're doing this every single day for the rest of your life. So she really is, out of line when she says stuff like that. She doesn't know how to really say it. She doesn't know what she's talking about when it comes to how the industry really works. But this is where it gets even worse, because we can obviously see that the bitterness is coming from after she was tossed by the Walt Disney Company, after she was tossed by Blumhouse Productions. She was supposed to be in a major new horror trilogy movie series. We'll talk more about that later down the road, but she was booted from that as well, along with other studios. She's essentially fired from Hollywood. More and more studios are beginning to wake up from a lot of actors and actresses that are just that insufferable, that get way too involved in politics. I mean, must I name Robert De Niro, Alec Baldwin, George Clooney, Julia Roberts, Rachel Zegler, Meghan Markle. Alright, the list goes on and on. But, she goes on to conclude, but my critique of the critics is that they don't understand this story. This is a story for a powerful woman of what she needs to be. A woman that doesn't necessarily need a prince. It's why we decided to create a Jonathan-type character as a bandit or this outlaw, and this character needed to be done instead. And we really weren't going for the traditional design of the character. We really wanted to dial back on the traditional love story. I think the growing issue in this industry, it stems from both the studio politics that these producers play at times, and the critics who have no clue what they are really talking about. Our film is widely successful whether people like that or not. The numbers are looking to be very promising, and I think it shows our success and just how hard we worked on this movie. I just have to thank the guidance from both Mark, Greta, and Erin for allowing me to play the best and perfected iteration of Snow White that holds more courage than any version yet, and it was the chance of a lifetime. So guys, again, there's the insufferable attitude again, how she's saying that this is by far the best iteration / version of Snow White than any other one that was done before. She's really just snubbing Kristen Stewart. She's snubbing the 1937 iteration of Snow White. She's snubbing the Brothers Grimm. Also 2012's Mirror Mirror with Lily Collins, I believe it was. And a whole lot more out there, I must add. But this is another example of Rachel Zegler really taking her bitterness out on the public because of what's been going on, not just behind the scenes, between studios like Disney, Blumhouse Productions, and among others out there that we've talked about, such as, for example, even, WB, Warner Brothers. She was supposed to be in this political thriller as a politician's daughter. We already talked about that. She was dropped from that role as well. The list just keeps going on, and it's growing. Now, again, we know that Rachel Zegler is not going to really give up on defending this movie. Disney, I think, doesn't really even care at this point because we know that Bob Iger, just like about a day or two ago, was also very unhinged when it came to the damage control surrounding this film, trying to really just say that this is going to be the best movie in the world. Even Rachel Zegler went on social media saying it's the #1 movie in the world on her Instagram. I mean, if you can't cope harder than that, I don't know what else you could do. But we know that even the TV spots are just very cringeworthy because you have characters like Dopey saying, people are rushing to the movie theaters, and you see the dwarves moving very slow. It's a very odd TV spot if you guys have seen it. But if you guys do want to drop a comment below in the comments below, let me know what you guys have to say about all this below and everything related to Snow White, and I will catch you guys later.